Hello everybody, welcome back to Porowhita Zoo with me, Ashley. Thank you for joining us, whether it's your first time or you're a repeat offender. Thank you for coming back. We are today building a Nyala exhibit. A Nyala, for anyone that's not sure what that is, it's a small antelope. You will see a version of them later on in the video. An Oasis, for anyone, again, to save you from Googling, that doesn't know, is a watering hole in an otherwise barren area. So if you find a good source of water in the middle of a desert or a dry grassland, then chances are you're looking at an oasis. It will also have lots of planting around it. That's Planet Zoo talk. It will also have lots of plant life around it, generally because it's the wettest area for a long way. So the plants tend to congregate, is what I was going to say. The plants tend to grow around there because it's a good source of water, whereas everywhere else around isn't. So that was actually where this idea started. So we have access in the game to an animal encyclopedia, and the encyclopedia gives you 5 fun facts for every animal in the game. One of the facts that it gives you for Nyalas is that they're one of the only antelope that needs a constant source of a reliable source of water nearby, because they don't get all of their water from their diet, whereas other antelope do. So the idea of an oasis for them to get that water from seemed like the perfect match for this animal. We are now seeing me build the Malawian flag. For anyone that knows that flag, so you might have recognised the colours as they went up on the wall. And the Malawian flag has a sunshine motif, so it's got a sun with 31 points of light coming off it in red on top. There's a reason for that, other than the fact that actually Malawi is part of the home range of wild Nyala, which it is, but I ran with that. And also another theme that has already presented itself in our previous builds, particularly Starlit Savannah, sorry, in so much as Starlit Savannah was based around, or at least part of it, the rainbow stuff was based around a gig that I saw Radiohead do off the back of their In Rainbows tour. And this is actually a bit of a tribute to another band that or group that I like, and have liked for a good long while now, called The Very Best. So The Very Best is a collaboration between a singer called Nyala, I hope I've said his name right, and a producer called Radioclit, or a couple of producers I think they are, who are London based. Nyala though is from Malawi originally, and Lilongwe, which is the capital, is where he grew up, I believe. So I wanted to combine the two things. I wanted to sort of do a bit of a tribute to Nyala, who seems, I think, is very proud of his heritage coming from Malawi, rightly so. And I wanted to incorporate that into, and I felt like it was a good match for the Nyala because they also come from here. So I started off by recreating the flag on that back wall there, but I felt like it was a bit too on the nose, so I stayed away from that a little bit. I had a bit of a break from building and came back to it and started to build this slightly more abstract pattern from the motif that's in the flag, the sunshine motif, using these semicircles and a slightly a checkerboard pattern, I guess, isn't it? Almost, except with 3 colours. I built this back wall. It didn't take too long, but it was quite fiddly, as you can probably tell, getting everything lined up just right and making sure that things weren't Z-biting. But I do think that it's quite an effective pattern actually, and that it's something that you might find in a zoo, because in the grand scheme of things, this would be quite a cheap thing for them to do. So, but also effective. Like it's nice and colourful, and it would draw people's attention. And that's what I was after actually with these Nyala, because Nyala are the sort of animal that tend to play second fiddle to the larger ones. There's a thing, I was going to call it a concept, but I don't suppose it is a concept really. No, I suppose it is a concept. So there's a concept in zoos and conservation of the Big Five, and the Big Five is the 5 most popular and actually largest African animals, and they use those as the draw for people to come to zoos. So you will see in my zoo, I've actually got the lion. I think that's one of the big 5. I can't remember off the top of my head. I should have checked before I mentioned them. But I've got the lion at the entrance, and that is to draw people in. You might also find elephants or giraffes or rhinos or hippos, who I think are 4 of the big 5, used in a similar fashion by zoos. But I think that also means that you tend to get animals like the Nyala are put to one side, and they're sort of, as I say, second fiddle to those larger, more prestigious animals. And I wanted to put that right a little bit in this zoo. I actually want every animal to have like an eye-catching or interesting enclosure in some way. And the way that I've tried to do that with the Nyala is with colours. So the colours are there to draw people's attention. If you imagine the car park is just beyond the fence line there, and people will see this enclosure as they're walking up. They won't know what's in it, and that's on purpose. But they will potentially see it and think, oh, that looks pretty interesting. Let's go seek that out. And they might make a beeline for this area. So that's the idea. So this is their shelter then. This is a fairly standard wooden hut sort of design, a circular wooden hut using wooden pieces. I can't remember which wooden pieces exactly. Possibly, is it? Yeah, it's the wooden beam. It was right up there on the screen. So you were probably shouting at the screen. But yeah, it's wooden beams, all coloured again to match the colours of the Malawian flag. And the roof, I wanted the roof to be an interesting shape, so that actually only takes, I think, 3 pieces that are then circulated so that they make the pattern. And there's a little, I'll show you in a moment when we're doing the walk around tour, but there's a little dimple on the top, and there's a ridge where it meets the roof as well. Very simple to do that sort of thing. Just do a bit of experimenting with shapes as well. If you're trying to do something similar in your zoo, if you want to give things interesting roof shapes, then for the most part it's just a case of using the symmetry to your advantage. So we are now, as you can see, I am now even putting in the planting around the oasis. So I've tried to bunch it very closely around the oasis and actually in the water. For obvious reasons. As I said, that is where the plants would end up, really, because that is where they would thrive, next to the water. At the same time, as you can see, I'm putting in some bushes around the edge of the perimeter, around the perimeter of the enclosure, because I think that makes it a bit more zoo-y, if that makes sense. So rather than it trying to be just a savannah style enclosure, I wanted it to feel like it was a mock-up of the savannah in a zoo space, and putting in that edging planting, I think, helps to do that. So the planting itself is primarily elephant grass and papyrus in the water and around the water's edge. We've got some bush willows as well, which are the water trees, trees that live around water. And then around in the grassy areas, I think we put a couple of other tree types. I tried, for the most part, I tried to keep to things that would actually appear in Malawi, but I had to go off piece to make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more fun to look at. So yeah, that's that. We'll have a little look now around the enclosure in real time. So I'll take you around on a little walking tour. We've got a shop and some planting outside of the enclosure to show you as well, so hope you like it. Here we are then, a few minor changes actually to our first build on Starlit Savannah. I keep calling it Sunlit Savannah, but Starlit Savannah. I've put in a small wall so that it separates the path from the eating area, and then there are 2 entrances or exits either end, and then we've got also some ATMs, and that makes this area even more usable, which is good. I always like things to be useful as they can be, as well as good looking, if if I can manage that as well, that's even better. So this is the start of what we've been building today. We've got a little garden area with the moss stones, which I quite like those, first time I've used them. Then on the back of our Starlit Savannah as well, we've got this area, which is a staff utilities area. We've got a staff room in here, then a zookeeper's hut in there, and then if we just zoom through the zookeeper's hut, we've got a workshop. So all of that is now incorporated into the back of Starlit Savannah. We've got our toilets and our information centre. I said it was a shop, but I meant this. I meant it was a utility, a guest utility. So there's toilets in there, and there's an information kiosk. And then as we come around the corner, I've blocked the sight lines for the staff areas off with this fence. I'd quite like to put a gate in here, but this fence is just so tall. It's too tall, really. And then when you want to put a gate in, you end up with half a door's height, and it's just no good. So I've just kept it as a full fence, and the staff can walk through it. So we've got this African fence, which is a standard piece in the game. You can use this. It's not built. I haven't built this. It was already in the game. I've changed I don't usually use it. I tried to use it near the entrance previously, but opted against it. It works here though, I think, and I've changed the colours to fit in with the Malawi theming, the flag colours. So we've got the red and the green with the sort of dark brown there, actually it is, but works as a black. And then we come around here and we've got the rock work over here, which I'll give you a bit of a look at now. They can't actually get up here, so that works as a barrier, and then the barrier is actually inside. There's a null barrier running through that, and we've also got throughout here, we've got these nettles in the actual rocks, because that is the sort of thing that happens when you've got little nooks and crannies in rocks. Plants find their way into them, and you end up with that sort of thing. So the path runs around, it bows out a little bit, and this is probably what I consider the main viewing area, because you get this uninterrupted view into the water's edge and into the water as well. So the water is slightly dipped down. You can't necessarily see all of it, but you could certainly see into the papyrus sedge if there were deer walking through that, which they do. There's one swimming there as well a lot. Just unpause the game so that it's actually everything's moving. And then we've got planting all around. I wanted it to feel sort of tropical, and there is a bit of a limit on the number of tropical plants that you actually have in the game, so I've ended up going for these ferny type things and the aloes, as I've said, and the river bush willows. But then in the grasslandy area of the enclosure, we've got these that we used in the Starlit Savannah as well, and I think that they work really, really well for open spaces. Lastly, we've got this strip down here, which is for the most part bare, but it's got these bushes. So the bushes are to keep they're primarily to keep the Nyala from going places that they shouldn't, so getting round behind here. No, obviously they don't do that in the game, they wouldn't get stuck in the game, but again, it strikes me as something that a zoo would probably do to try and block off areas that might pose a problem for the animals. So I said about the roof, I really like the roof and the way it's worked out. The pieces, I set it up so that there were two pieces opposite one another, and then I circled it round as I've done previously in other builds, in Chester Zoo in particular. But I think this is the first one where I've been really, really pleased with the texture that it comes out with it. So especially up here, look, where it gets really, where everything's really overlapped and you've got these diamond shapes, it almost looks like snake skin in a way. And then inside the top, so I said that it had this little dimple in the top, so it comes up and meets if you overlap your beams, then you end up with something like this, and it looks extremely circular for one, which is great. It's got a really smooth interior, and then on the outside this really textured, almost snakeskin like look to it, which is absolutely brilliant. It also kind of reminds me of wicker, you know, like wicker work, wicker baskets and things like that. So the idea that it's been woven together kind of comes across there, which is nice. Not exactly what I was going for, but I'm actually more pleased with this than I would have been with what I was hoping for. So a slightly closer look at the pattern on the back wall. Then we've got the green, the black and the red, and that alternates so that actually every panel has got a green piece, a black piece and a red piece. And again, I think that ties it. Having just the panels, I tried it with just the panels instead of the semicircles, and it was fine, but I think that putting the semicircles in and having each piece with all three colours in it just ties it together so much better, and makes it work a heck of a lot better. So yeah, I'm actually really pleased with this. I hope everybody likes it. The toilet's simple. You can probably build it yourself, but I'll pop that on the workshop if you want it. I'll pop the hut and the back wall on the workshop as well, and I'll see about putting the entire enclosure on the workshop as well, if you would like to download it. All of those links will be in the description, and yeah, that's everything. Thank you for joining us again. I hope you're enjoying the series so far. Please do like, share, comment, all of those things that everybody asks you to do, because it helps us out. It helps get new people watching the videos that might like them, and it helps us with YouTube as well, so getting sort of up there in the rankings and whatnot. So yeah, I will see you next week for another episode of Porowhita.